Climate change, we have a limited amount of time to resolve it, and it concerns everyone.
And now that we have an administration here in the US who is actively fighting against any kind of climate action and exiting the Paris Agreement, what strategies do we need to keep climate action moving forward?
We look at using the courts to right wrongs.
We've been working on how to bring climate change to the court.
If the legislature and executive don't do it, the courts can step in and do it.
The courts. The courts. The courts.
I often say that there are a number of tools in the toolbox. And the first one should always be hopefully being able to sit down with someone and have a thoughtful conversation and strategy about being able to move forward. When that doesn't work, some folks will utilize the court system to be able to push back, and you're seeing that now.
Throughout history, law has been an important driver for civil rights, for the environment.
There have been so many landmark situations where, like, Brown versus Board of Education was a major court case that shifted civil rights.
I think Brown versus Board of Education just epitomizes a beautiful American story.
And it strikes me as well that the courts can sometimes be this tool for moving, a social justice issue forward, even if, Congress or legislative, if other places are kind of stuck.
In 1954, there was a lot of stuck, and something had to shift. The youth were seeking a constitutionally compliant public education system. And the Supreme Court kind of made that shift on behalf of this incredible legal work. And I think today with climate change, the movement is there, and the majority of Americans and people across the world support really strong climate action. And the political branches are completely failing.
With the withdrawal from the Paris Accord, it's clear that the federal government is not going to take any significant steps forward. From a standpoint of a local government like the city of Santa Cruz, the legal system is probably the most effective tool to deal with the impacts of climate change. This case is in many ways similar to other lawsuits that have been brought against major corporations, including lawsuits against the lead paint industry, against the petroleum industry relating to MTBE, a toxic additive in gasoline, as well as, of course, the tobacco industry.
Yes.
There are a few really interesting cases that are happening right now. Young people bringing cases both in the United States but also elsewhere in Colombia, in the international courts in The Hague, based around essentially suing the older generation for not respecting the rights of younger generations.
This is not about money. It's a constitutional case where what the youth seek is a constitutionally compliant energy system. So that's what we're really looking for in Juliana, is protection of these young people's Fifth Amendment rights to life, liberty, and property, and their public trust rights to have resources like air and water and climate. And so these youth are coming in as the beneficiaries of a trust, just like if there was a college trust fund for them, and they are the beneficiaries, and they're coming into the court saying the trustee of these essential resources are wasting our trust assets, and we're suing them to force them to remedy that.
Can you tell us a little bit about the case and what you learned from talking with Mira?
This was when you were in Delhi?
Yeah. So when she was telling me about how they got in touch with Ritna, which is a 9-year-old girl, she lives in the mountains. There's a lot of flooding, mudslides, and people are seeing full effects, large scale, in a way that maybe if you're in Delhi, you don't actually see that.
So it's LIFE, which is
the Legal Initiative for Forest and the Environment.
LIFE.
Nice. They're using law and creative ways to be able to push forth a huge court case against India for not fulfilling its Paris Agreement contract.
India has a lot of policies on the issue of climate change, but on ground these policies are not translating into effective measures.
And our Prime Minister only is speaking in abstract. Everything is in abstract. What has happened on the ground, what steps is going to take. If the government is not doing anything, then only recourse is to go to the courts.
So basically the judge said you have raised everything under the sun. So what do you want us to do?
Sure.
So through Ridhima's case, we are hoping that the government will actually take steps that can be implemented on ground and help the people who are actually facing the issue of climate change.
The first question from the judge was, why a child? What we said is the sea is not part of the decision making, and sea is going to be affected whatever decision the government is taking now.
She's really inspiring because as a 9-year-old, I wouldn't have thought about doing any of this. I hope more and more Ridhimas and come out, post this case.
There's so many 9-year-olds in the world, and if we're able to give a voice to that because we understand how legal issues should be fought, then this is the way forward.
While you were in India, I was in California talking to people about a different court case.
Both the city of Santa Cruz and the county of Santa Cruz filed complaints on the same day. So we'll be joining with other cities and counties who are also similarly impacted by climate change.
In this case, the city is suing 29 major carbon-producing industries, including Exxon, Royal Dutch Shell, BP, ConocoPhillips. The suit is based upon several very time-tested theories of legal liability under California law: negligence, negligent failure to warn, strict liability, trespass, and public and private nuisance. We believe this case is distinguishable in that it is exclusively based on well-settled principles of California law.
There's a lot of information from ExxonMobil that is available through their archives. And in there were documents from 50 years ago which said that the corporation needed to do something because their production of fossil fuels was going to contribute to a climactic moment probably by the year 2000.
Public research around climate change at that time wasn't a huge priority. And so you had one of the biggest multinational corporations in the world that had ships, that had oil rigs. They could measure CO2 emissions from their various, installations. They were collecting some of the most convincing data around climate change.
They came to the same conclusion that their products are emitting greenhouse gases that cause global warming and sea level rise, and that they even invested in raising their oil rigs and took other measures to protect themselves, but then conducted a disinformation campaign against that.
They lied about it, they blocked legislation, and we're going to seek justice in the courts.
They have responsibility to our community and our taxpayers to help pay for the impacts that we're seeing with climate change. It's happening fast, and it's real for the people who live here.
The reality is there's going to be billions and billions of dollars in costs from climate change, and the question is, should the people pay for it, or should big oil, who knew about the potential damages and reaped billions of dollars in profits, pay for it? And that's the fundamental question.
Seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, it seems fair to me.
Yeah. And so where are we in the process? Can you kind of tell me about the timeline?
One of the challenges of lawsuits is that they take a long time. So we filed the complaint. Now the companies will respond, and then we go through a long process of discovery and expert witnesses and everything else. But we've seen the case. The science is on our side. The history is on our side. So I'm feeling pretty confident about our chances.
So where are you in this case? And maybe can you kind of lay out like what's happened so far and the timeline and the key moments?
This is not a political case just against the Trump administration. We filed it in August 2015. We had many rounds of briefing and 2 oral arguments, and we had 2 federal judges say we're allowing the case to go forward. And so then we began preparing for trial. The way a case typically moves forward is if you beat a motion to dismiss, then you get to go to trial. At the end of the day, when you have a final decision in your case, then whoever loses can appeal. We did have a trial date set for February 5th, 2018, and that's been delayed since President Trump was in office. So they came up with this creative petition to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. It's called a writ of mandamus. They wanted to do an early appeal and avoid having to go to trial. And it's just not the way the rules of our court system work. So we've briefed that issue in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. We had an oral argument in December of 2017, and we are now waiting for a decision, but we're hopeful we will have a decision this month. Fingers crossed for this week. And as soon as we get back to the district court, we think we can be in trial in about 6 months. Wow. So we're moving as quickly as possible. I have to get this.
That's okay. Get it. Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry.
No worries.
Phil, is it the decision? No way. Okay, I'm doing this video interview right now, and Kaya, we just got the decision.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Ready, Phil? So, Kaya, I'm talking to my co-counsel right now.
Yeah.
The panel denied without prejudice a petition for a writ of mandamus. The panel also held that any merits errors were correctable through the ordinary course of litigation. For these reasons, we decline to exercise our discretion to grant mandamus relief at this stage of litigation. Woo-hoo! Oh my God, it finally came!
We shouldn't forget that new legislation is probably better than all of these options, and that using existing authority or challenging things in the courts, while a really important component of an open and democratic society, that's not how we should be making climate policy.